What do you call a country that's doubly landlocked and brimming with history? Welcome to the Republic of Uzbekistan.
Hey, I'm Garrett, feeling pretty stoked today and ready to dive into something fascinating.
And I'm Leah, excited to unpack today's topic with you all. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett. Today, we're exploring the rich tapestry of the Republic of Uzbekistan.
I remember reading about the Silk Road back in school. That's the old network of trade routes that connected East Asia to the Mediterranean. And Samarkand, which is one of Uzbekistan's crown jewel cities, showed up in every chapter as this incredible hub of culture, commerce, and ideas. It kind of blew my mind to picture caravans hauling silk and spices across deserts into these walled oases, and scholars swapping astronomy notes over tea. It's wild how those ancient routes still echo in how places connect today.
Let's open the book on this. Uzbekistan sits in Central Asia and is what's called doubly landlocked. That means you have to cross at least two other countries to reach the sea. It borders Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan, which makes it a kind of regional crossroads. Geography-wise, it ranges from the Kizilkum Desert to river oases along the Amu Darya and Sir Darya. Those are big rivers that never reach an ocean. They end in what's called an endorheic basin, basically a closed drainage system. Cities like Tashkent, Samarkand, and the Fergana Valley clusters pull a lot of the population and energy.
Demographics-wise, the population is over 38 million, the biggest in Central Asia. That youthful vibe shapes jobs and schools, for sure. Uzbek is the official language. You'll also hear Russian and Tajik in plenty of neighborhoods. Fun language note, since the 1990s, there's been a shift from Cyrillic to a Latin-based script, but Cyrillic still shows up a lot in day-to-day life. Politically, it's a secular state with a semi-presidential system. So, power is split between a president and government, but the executive has historically been strong. Recent years have seen reforms, things like currency changes, business rules getting simpler, and friendlier regional ties. That's pretty cool, right?
Here's something to get us started on the deeper history. This region goes back to ancient polities like Khorazm, Sogdiana, and Bactria. Those were early Iranian-speaking societies that used irrigation to turn riverbanks into city life. Later, Persian rulers like Cyrus the Great and Darius the Great, who led the Achaemenid Empire, folded parts of this land into satrapies. A satrapy is just an imperial province. Then Alexander the Great swept through around 327 BC, and even he, with all that momentum, ran into fierce resistance here. Hellenistic influences lingered, but the locals didn't just roll over.
After that, the Kushan Empire, led originally by the Yuezhi, took shape and turned the region into a super cosmopolitan zone. Think coins, cities, and ideas moving in every direction. Then came waves like the Hephthalites, the Sassanids from Iran, and the Turkic Gökturks. Fast forward to the early Islamic period, Qutayba ibn Muslim, an Arab general in the 700s, pushed the Muslim conquests into Transoxiana. Transoxiana is an old name for the lands beyond the Oxus River, which is the Amu Darya. Cities such as Bukhara and Samarkand became magnets for scholarship during the Islamic Golden Age. Madrasas, which are schools of learning, and observatories flourished.
In the 800s to 900s, you get the Samanid Empire. Persianate culture really thrived under them, meaning Persian language and arts blended with local traditions. Later, the Karakhanids, a Turkic dynasty, rose, often overseen by the Seljuks. That transition helped solidify the Turkic linguistic footprint while keeping Persian cultural styles alive. Real talk, this layering is why the place has such a textured identity. And then the 1200s hit with the Mongol conquest under Genghis Khan, which brought destruction to cities like Bukhara and Samarkand. Over time, though, under his descendants in the Chagatai realm, trade networks stabilized again.
Let's dig into one of the biggest regional turning points. In the 1300s, Timur, also known in the West as Tamerlane, rose to power. He wasn't a descendant of Genghis Khan, but he built the Timurid Empire anyway and used Samarkand as his capital. His court pulled in artisans and scholars from across the lands he conquered. It was brutal conquest, no doubt, but the cultural aftershocks were huge. Then you get Ulugh Beg, Timur's grandson, a ruler and serious astronomer. He built an observatory in Samarkand in the 1400s and mapped stars with striking precision. Think pre-telescope, but still elite science. That's a legacy you can still feel when you walk those streets today. I mean, figuratively.
Okay, moving forward. Uzbek dynasties like the Shaybanids later took over in the 1500s, and the region kept shifting with rival powers. By the 1800s, the Russian Empire expanded into Central Asia, folding Khanates into what became Russian Turkestan with Tashkent as a major center. By 1924, the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic was created inside the USSR. And then comes the 20th century's big turning point here. In 1991, Uzbekistan declared independence. Islam Karimov, who had led the republic as a Soviet-era official, became the first president and shaped politics for decades after.
After Karimov's death in 2016, Shavkat Mirziyoyev took the helm. He's the current president and kicked off a wave of reforms. One massive move was in 2017, when the currency became fully convertible at market rates. That's a big trust signal for investors and traders. Regionally, ties with neighbors, like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, have warmed, and relations with partners such as China, Turkey, Russia, India, and the European Union have been on the upswing. Folks call this a multi-vector foreign policy. Simple version, it means balancing many partnerships at once so the country isn't over-reliant on any single one. Yeah, that checks out for a land-connected hub like this.
Here's where it gets really interesting on environment and economy. The Aral Sea, once one of the world's largest inland seas, shrank to about 10% of its size after the 1960s because the Amu Darya and Sir Darya were aggressively diverted for irrigation, especially for cotton. That created huge dust and salt storms, serious health stress, and salinized soils, particularly in Karakalpakstan, which is an autonomous republic within Uzbekistan. Mitigation now includes planting vegetation on the exposed seabed and shifting agriculture to be more water-smart. That means canal lining, drip irrigation, and crop diversification, basically using less water for better yields.
Economically, cotton still matters. Uzbekistan is a major producer. But there's a push to move up the value chain from raw cotton to textiles and to reduce past labor abuses. In 2020, the United Nations reported significant progress, noting that most cotton pickers were working voluntarily, which is a big shift from prior allegations of forced mobilization. Energy-wise, Uzbekistan is the largest electricity producer in Central Asia, thanks to natural gas and Soviet-era plants. At the same time, air pollution is a hard challenge. Tashkent has seen PM 2.5, tiny particles 2.5 micrometers or smaller that can get deep into lungs, running way above World Health Organization guidelines. Policies are starting to target cleaner fuels and transport, but it's a big lift.
I'm curious, why does being doubly landlocked shape so many policy choices? It feels like more than just a geography fact.
Great question. Why? Being doubly landlocked means almost any maritime trade has to pass through at least two neighbors. So rail corridors, pipelines, dry ports, and customs harmonization become your lifelines. In practice, that pushes heavy investment into overland connectivity east-west and north-south. It also encourages what we just called multi-vector diplomacy. You keep relations with each neighbor functional so your goods and energy can flow. It's a lot of logistics engineering, not gonna lie.
That tracks. Let's sketch a couple of political notes, keeping it real and factual. International watchdogs have often described Uzbekistan as authoritarian with limited civil rights, though reforms since 2016 have included releasing some political prisoners, easing travel restrictions like old exit visas, and modernizing services. In 2024, the VDEM indices still described the country as a closed autocracy. That means the political competition and media space remain tightly managed even as other systems modernize. Socially, male and female homosexuality is illegal under current law, and human rights groups keep calling for protections and decriminalization. Those are sensitive topics, but they're part of the landscape.
While we're on a roll, a couple more pieces to note. Uzbekistan borders all 4 other Central Asian states, which is rare and makes it a linchpin for regional projects. It's in groups like the UN, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That last one is a security and economic forum anchored by China and Russia. Uzbekistan also belongs to the Organization of Turkic States, a cultural and economic cooperation club for Turkic language countries. That mix helps with transit agreements and cross-border energy swaps, the nuts and bolts of a land-linked economy.
Switching gears to a lingering puzzle, the word Uzbek itself. The origin is disputed. Some say it comes from Uz mean own and Beg meaning leader, sort of like self-master. Others suggest a link to Oguz Kagan, also called Oguz Beg, who's a legendary Turkic ancestor. That theory basically treats the name as an eponym, named after a figure. Another idea is that it's a contraction of Oguz plus Beg, meaning leader of the Oguz. And some argue it refers to Özbeg Khan of the Golden Horde. He was a 14th century ruler whose name might have influenced the ethnonym. Different lenses, mythic, linguistic, or historical biography, all try to explain it.
I'm kind of partial to the linguistic angle, honestly. The Turkic title Beg shows up a lot historically, meaning chief or lord. So reading Uzbek as something like own leader or a contracted form, Tayguz plus Beg feels tidy. Languages love to mash and morph over centuries, but I get the appeal of a namesake theory. A big ruler like Özbeg Khan leaving a naming imprint is not far-fetched. Empire-era labels have a way of sticking.
I lean upon him. Özbeg Khan as a historical figure. He led a major Mongol successor state, the Golden Horde, in the 1300s, could have been a strong reference point. Names tied to leaders are easy to rally around and remember. Plus, if we think about how identity forms after big political shifts, anchoring it to a prominent ruler fits the pattern we see globally. But I also admit the linguistic evolution could have been happening right alongside that. We've got layers here.
Totally. Maybe the best answer is that multiple forces converged. A prominent Khan boosting a term that already made linguistic sense. History loves a both and. If I had to pick, I still go with the structural linguistics view. It explains how titles embed into ethnonyms across Turkic languages. But I'm down for the leader legend spice on top. That hits different, story-wise.
And real talk, without definitive sources to close the case, both theories can live in productive tension. It tells us how identity is part language, part power, part memory. That's a thread worth pulling on in future research.
Speaking of memory and imagery, pop culture has a lot of untapped space here. Picture a series set in Samarkand during the Timurid Renaissance. You've got Ulugh Beg's observatory as a scientific hub, scholars debating geometry under mosaic domes, caravan traders rolling in from China and Persia, or a modern drama that weaves rail corridors, customs posts, and dry ports into a connectivity thriller. Silk Road vibes meet contemporary logistics. I could get behind that idea.
Let's take a counterfactual. What if the Soviet-era irrigation policies had not diverted the Amudarya and Sirdarya so heavily for cotton? In other words, what if the Aral Sea had remained largely intact?
I imagine a thriving inland sea acting like a regional climate buffer. Big lakes, moderate temperatures. You'd have robust fisheries and boatyards on the shoreline, a tourism belt in warm months, and less frequent dust and salt storms. Agriculture could still be strong, but with smarter water footprints. Maybe an earlier shift to higher-value horticulture that uses drip systems, more greenhouses in oases, fewer open-channel losses. I picture river deltas with tugai forests, those riparian woodlands, stabilizing soils and habitats, biodiversity getting a real second act. That's a different starting point for public health and local economies.
I'm right there with you. Socially, healthier air means fewer respiratory illnesses, less strain on clinics, and kids missing fewer school days. Economically, a steady fishing sector plus diversified crops could reduce the pressure to stick with cotton monoculture. That's when you grow mostly one crop, which is risky long-term. And with the sea intact, cross-border cooperation might have formed around fisheries management, tourism, and shared conservation instead of crisis response. It's not a silver bullet world, but the baseline for well-being is just better. That's the heartbeat of Uzbekistan's story for now. Keep exploring and stay curious.
Absolutely, folks. Till next time, take care and keep it chill.